On a warm summer morning in June 2012, the Mitchell family packed their old station wagon for a day at Cedar Grove Park. Susan Mitchell carried a wicker picnic basket filled with ham sandwiches, cheese sticks, and fresh fruit. Mark, her husband, folded a red and white blanket over his arm. Their 11-year-old twins, Emma and Lily, bounced beside them as they walked toward the entrance. The sun shone bright, and the air smelled sweet with grass and wildflowers. The twins chattered excitedly about the games they planned to play. Emma spoke about the frog-catching contest near the stream, while Lily dreamed aloud of climbing the big oak tree in the meadow. They each carried small backpacks. Emma's was blue, with her favorite water bottle and sketchbook inside. Lily's was green, full of snacks and her prized collection of smooth stones she gathered on walks with her grandmother, Susan and Mark. Staked out a spot beneath the ancient oak tree, its wide branches spread like protective arms over a soft patch of grass. After laying out the blanket, Susan unpacked the basket. She laid sandwiches in neat rows, placed the fruit in a bowl, and arranged tall glasses for lemonade. Mark turned on his phone to play soft music and watched the children run ahead. Their laughter ringing through the trees, Emma and Lily raced down a nearby trail toward a patch of bright yellow daisies. Emma bent low to examine a tiny frog perched on a wet rock. Lily knelt beside her sister, blowing gently on the frog to keep it still while Emma sketched it in her notebook. The frog remained calm in Emma's careful hands, and soon it hopped back to the pond's edge. The girls clapped joyfully and chased each other back toward the picnic spot, their voices echoing. As they returned, Emma noticed something carved into the oak's trunk. It was a simple spiral pattern with lines branching off. She pointed it out to Lily. "Look at this," she said, tracing the markings with her finger. Lily peered closely, her brow furrowing. Did someone carve that? She wondered. They ran their fingers over the rough bark, feeling the shallow grooves. Then Susan's voice called from the blanket, "Girls, lunch is ready." The twins sprinted back. Emma was first, her sketchbook held tight to her chest. Lily followed, giggling and breathless. They took their seats and dug into the sandwiches, chatting about the frog and the carving. Susan listened with a smile as Mark refilled their glasses with cold lemonade. The breeze rustled through the leaves, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. After eating, Emma asked if she could go draw under the oak. While Lily said she wanted to explore a small hollow in the tree's trunk, Susan agreed, on the condition they stayed in sight. Emma settled on a flat root with her sketchbook open, capturing the graceful arch of the oak's branches. Lily crouched beside the hollow, peering inside. She tapped the wood lightly, curious about what might be hidden within. A few minutes passed in quiet play. Then Mark glanced at his watch and suggested a family game of tag. Emma closed her sketchbook and joined Mark, while Lily followed her. Stones still in her pocket, they laughed and chased each other around the tree. Lily slipped behind a bush to hide, her small figure soon lost among the tall grass. Suddenly, Emma stopped near her mother and gasped. "Where's Lily?" she asked. Eyes wide, Mark dropped to one knee, calling her name. "Lily. Where are you, sweetheart?" He scanned the meadow, the path to the pond, even the hollow in the tree. Susan stood frozen, her heart pounding. Emma ran to the hollow. It was empty. Lily's stones lay scattered on the ground. Fear tightened in Susan's chest. She set the blanket down and raced toward the pond, calling Lily's name in a trembling voice. Mark joined, his phone lighting the way as he searched under bushes and behind trees. Emma followed, tears in her eyes, crying, "Mama, Papa, where is Lily?" The park felt large and empty without her laughter. Park rangers arrived within minutes. They directed volunteers and family friends in a careful grid search. Dogs sniffed the ground, trained to pick up Lily's scent. Susan watched them with damp cheeks, her hands clenched around Mark's arm. Emma stood beside her, trembling, clutching her sketchbook to her chest like a lifeline. They searched around the oak tree again and again, tracing every step Lily might have taken. No one heard her voice calling for help. The sheriff's deputies set up floodlights as night fell, painting the park in harsh white light. Susan and Mark huddled together on a folding chair, Emma between them, her head on her father's shoulder. Volunteers offered blankets and water, but no one could warm the icy fear in their hearts. By dawn, the search had covered every inch of Cedar Grove Park. A few neighbors had joined, forming human chains near the stream and the picnic areas. But as the sun rose, hope drained away. Lily was still gone. The sheriff spoke quietly with Susan and Mark. He promised to keep looking, to talk to every camper and visitor. "We will not give up," he said. In the days that followed, the town rallied around the Mitchell family. Posters with Lily's smiling face appeared on lampposts, shop windows, and telephone poles. Local news interviewed Susan and Mark there, voices steady despite the pain in their eyes. Emma returned to school, but could not focus on lessons. She carried Lily's absence like a shadow. At home, the twins' room remained untouched. Lily's toys sat waiting, her bed neatly made but empty. Each night, Susan and Mark took turns patrolling the park. They scanned every trail, every hidden nook, calling Lily's name until their voices cracked. Emma stood with them sometimes, wrapping her arms around her mother and whispering promises that she would find her sister. But each promise felt more fragile than the last. A week after Lily's disappearance, detectives interviewed everyone who had been at the park that day. The camper claimed to have seen a small girl near the oak and thought she looked lost. But when shown Lily's photo, he shook his head, unsure. A jogger remembered hearing a faint cry but thought it was a bird. There were no clear answers, only theories that dissolved under closer questioning. The local community organized a finding Lily Walk each month. People from all over brought flashlights and posters, searching through thick brush and along the pond's edge. They called out her name in unison under the oak tree, though no one found her. Each search gave Susan and Mark a small spark of hope that Lily might still be somewhere. Waiting to be found, Emma continued her sketches, filling page after page. With drawings of the oak tree, searching figures, and a small girl's green backpack, she dated each sketch, hoping that the day they found Lily would match one of her drawings. At night, she wrote in a journal addressed to her sister, telling her about school, their pets at home, and how much she missed her laughter. Months turned into years. The oak tree still stood tall, its carvings fading with time. Parents moved to a smaller house, closer to town, but they never left Cedar Grove Park behind. Every year on the anniversary of Lily's disappearance, they returned to the oak with fresh flowers, sandwiches, and lemonade. They sat in silence beneath its branches, listening to the wind and remembering the day they lost Lily. Even after 11 years, the families of Cedar Grove hold on to the hope that Lily will come home. Emma, now older, still sketches the park, and the tree, believing one day her sister's face will reappear in one of her drawings. The bench near the oak is painted with Lily's name, a reminder that every search, every prayer, keeps her memory alive. And somewhere beneath the sunlit branches, the promise of finding Lily lingers in the gentle rustle of leaves. In the weeks after Lily disappeared, the Mitchell family felt as though time itself had stopped. Every morning, Susan woke before dawn, her eyes bloodshot from crying through the night. She tiptoed through the dark house, careful not to wake Mark, and brewed a pot of coffee. Steam curled up in the quiet kitchen as she stared at Lily's green backpack hanging by the door. It was as if the bag waited patiently for Lily's return. Its zipper still half open, a half-eaten granola bar peeking out. Susan's hands trembled as she brought the coffee to her lips and whispered Lily's name into the silence. Mark tried to hold things together for his wife and daughter. He spent his days at the office, but his mind never left Cedar Grove Park. He paced the living room in the early evenings, checking his phone for news, clicking through voicemail messages from detectives, reporters, and volunteers. Each message sounded the same kind words, promises to help, reassurances that the police were working hard. But none offered any real answers. He sank into his armchair, rubbing his temples, wondering how to comfort Susan and Emma when he himself felt helpless. Emma, once bright and chatty, became quiet and withdrawn. She spent hours in her room, drawing sketches of the park and the oak tree, Each drawing captured a different moment of that day, Lily's small figure wandering toward the hollow. The spiral marks on the bark, the empty space where Lily should have been standing. Emma wrote notes in the margins. Lily would smile here. Lily turned to look at me. Lily called my name. She dated each sketch, hoping the timeline might reveal some clue. Her sketchbook grew thick with drawings, but none offered a way to bring Lily back. At school, teachers noticed the change in Emma. Her grades slipped, and she struggled to concentrate. During art class, she often stared out the window, lost in memories of her sister. Friends tried to cheer her up, but Emma would only offer a faint smile before retreating to a corner with her sketchbook. At lunchtime, she sat alone, tracing the spiral mark from the oak on a paper napkin. When worried classmates asked about Lily, Emma nodded and whispered, "We're still looking." But even she was not sure how long they could keep looking without giving in to despair. In town, the community came together with a single purpose: find Lily. Local volunteers organized weekly searches of Cedar Grove Park. They printed flyers with Lily's face, her green backpack, and the date she vanished. Families, friends, and strangers formed human chains, scanning the underbrush, calling her name. Some brought trained search dogs, hoping their sensitive noses might pick up a faint scent. Others hung homemade posters on telephone poles and lampposts. The town square hosted candlelight vigils each Friday evening, where candles flickered against the dark sky and neighbors held hands. A simple wooden bench near the town hall was painted green in Lily's honor, with her name carved into the backrest. Susan joined every vigil and search. She tied ribbons to trees at Cedar Grove, each ribbon bearing a note. "Come home, Lily. We love you. We won't give up." She left flowers by the oak tree and sat for hours, speaking softly to her daughter as if Lily could hear her. "I'm so sorry I let you wander," Susan said one afternoon, resting her hand on the rough bark. Tears fell onto the tree's roots. "I promise I'll bring you home." Park rangers found Susan's ribbons and flowers and tucked them into their coats so they would not be lost or blown away by the wind. Detectives returned to the case with renewed determination. They re-interviewed park visitors from that day, checking their travel routes and cell phone records. They examined old surveillance footage from nearby cabins and rest areas. A camper who had once mentioned seeing a small girl near the oak was found again. He insisted he saw Lily walking alone along a narrow path toward the creek. But the path ended abruptly at a steep embankment. He had heard a soft splash, but thought it was a fallen log hitting the water. When asked if he heard a cry for help, he shook his head. "I didn't want to get involved," he said quietly. "I thought someone was out with her." Detectives pressed for more details, but the man's memory was hazy. They cataloged every lead, every rumor, and then moved on when nothing panned out. Word spread of strange stories about the oak tree. Park staff recalled hearing a faint whisper of children's voices at dusk, though no one was there to answer. Some volunteers claimed they saw the spiral carving glow faintly at twilight. Most dismissed these tales as imagination, grief-twisting reality. But Emma kept her own record of these stories, clipping newspaper articles and writing down dates and times. She believed that if these strange events were real, it might lead her back to Lily. Susan and Mark struggled to keep their marriage intact under the weight of grief. They argued quietly at night over dinner that always felt too silent, over emails from journalists asking for interviews over whether they should move away. Mark suggested they sell the house and start fresh somewhere else. Susan shook her head fiercely. "I can't leave her behind," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "She's out there, and we promised to find her." Their one steady partnership now balanced on a knife's edge, each afraid to bring up Lily's name, knowing it could shatter what little calm they had left. Community support swelled and receded like the tide. Some neighbors moved on to other causes, believing the search had gone on too long. Others remained steadfast, checking the park every week no matter the weather. Local businesses donated supplies, bottled water, snack bars, flashlights to volunteers. The grocery store offered free coffee to anyone searching for Lily. A florist donated white lilies each month, sending them to the park bench near the oak, with a note: "Hope blooms eternal." These gestures kept the Mitchells going, reminding them that their pain was shared by many who refused to give up. Emma's school held a special art show to honor Lily. Students displayed paintings, photographs, and poems inspired by her story. Emma hung one of her sketches of the spiral carving in the oak, framing it in green to match Lily's backpack. At the opening night, local residents walked through the gallery, pausing at Emma's work to offer condolences and praise. "Your art is beautiful," one neighbor said softly. "We'll find her, Emma." Emma nodded, clutching her mother's hand. Years passed in a blur of searches and vigils, of small victories and endless heartbreak. Lily's name remained, painted on the park bench, and her backpack sat in the Mitchell living room as a silent testament to hope. Emma grew taller and more solemn. She switched from drawing in sketchbooks to creating a digital map of the park's trails, marking points of interest: the oak tree, the hollow, the stream, the old stone wall. She updated the map whenever new information came in, believing that one day a pattern would emerge. On the 11th anniversary of Lily's disappearance, the town organized a massive search event. Hundreds of volunteers walked the park together, their footsteps echoing like a promise. At sunset, they gathered near the oak, lighting candles and reading messages of love and forgiveness. Emma stepped forward and spoke into a handheld microphone. Her voice trembled but carried across the meadow. "Lily, we miss you every day. We'll never stop looking. You are our heart, and this park is our home. Come back to us." The crowd fell silent, tears shining in candlelight. That night, as Susan and Mark lay in bed, they held hands and listened to the chorus of crickets outside. 11 years of searching had tested them, but their love for Lily had never wavered. Emma slept in the guest room downstairs, her laptop open to the digital map she had been refining. Somewhere deep in the shadows of Cedar Grove Park, a pattern waited to be found. And as long as the Mitchells and their community kept calling, Lily's name, hope, remained alive. Two gentle words rising again and again in the summer air. Rosa Delgado arrived at Cedar Grove Park just as the morning mist began to lift. She parked her dusty SUV along the gravel road and stepped out with her gear. Rosa was a treasure hunter by trade, but more than that, she was a student of forgotten stories. She traveled the country seeking old legends, lost gold, hidden letters, messages in bottles. This assignment felt different. All she had to go on was rumor and a faded newspaper clipping about an outlaw's buried stash under the oak tree where the Mitchell family's little girl vanished years ago. She adjusted her wide-brimmed hat and slung a canvas bag over her shoulder. Inside were her tools: a ground-penetrating radar device, camera with extra batteries, a notebook full of hand-drawn maps, and a small digital recorder. Rosa thought carefully before starting any search. Years of experience had taught her that a single clue, no matter how tiny, could open a world of meaning. She walked slowly across the meadow, her boots sinking slightly into the soft grass. The oak tree stood in the center, its trunk wide with age, and its branches stretching in every direction like welcoming arms. Rosa switched on her radar device and swept it slowly over the ground. A pale green screen lit up with undulating lines, showing roots and stones beneath the surface. She crouched low, tracing the screen's curves with her finger. Then she noticed something: a almost perfect spiral pattern in the soil readings. It looked as if something once carved a swirl into the earth, then pressed down firmly. Rosa frowned. She knew how natural root formations appeared, and this was not one of them. This was deliberate. She rose and walked around the tree, tapping the bark with a gloved hand. The oak's rough surface felt alive under her touch. She looked up and studied the patterns high on the trunk, spotting faint carvings no one else seemed to notice. There were thin lines forming an imperfect spiral, with shorter lines branching off at odd angles. The markings were shallow but consistent, as if someone had used a small knife to etch symbols long ago. Rosa crouched and used her camera's macro lens to photograph each mark. Each click of the shutter felt like she was capturing a whisper from the past. After finishing her initial sweep, Rosa climbed onto a folding stool to get a better angle at eye level with the carvings. From this vantage point, she counted 12 spirals, each connected to smaller lines that seemed to point in different directions. A chill ran down her spine. In her travels, she'd seen spiral symbols used by many cultures, but this shape was familiar. It matched a system of trail markers used by mountain trappers over a century ago. They carved signs into trees to map safe routes, warn of danger, or designate hidden caches. It was rare to find them now, especially in a public park. She packed away her camera and pulled out her notebook. On its pages lay sketches of other marker systems. She flipped through until she found a spiral design with radiating strokes. It was nearly identical. Rosa's eyes widened. If these were trappers' marks, then they had meaning. They could lead to something intentionally buried or disturbingly buried too deep. The markings near the oak might be a map. She was the first in years to notice. Rosa called her friend and local historian Dr. Paul Gardner. Within an hour, Paul arrived, carrying a battered leather satchel of old reference books. He smiled. When he saw Rosa, "You found them," he said, nodding toward the carvings. Rosa handed him her photographs and notes. Paul brushed his sultan pepper hair back and studied the images. "These are indeed old trapper marks," he mumbled. "They point toward water, danger, and in some cases hidden goods." He traced one of the lines with a finger. "This branch here means follow me, and this spiral means this spot. Whoever carved this wanted someone specific to find something." Rosa and Paul spent the next hour walking around the oak, comparing her radar scan to Paul's. Theories. They measured distances. 6 paces northeast led to a low mound, 8 paces southwest to a rocky outcrop, and so on. Rosa marked each point on a fresh map. Then she noticed one more thing. The mound was at the base of a large stone wall, half hidden by brush. It was old, perhaps the remains of a 19th century homestead or barn foundation. Were smooth from weather, but one stone looked newer, its edges sharper and less worn. With careful precision, Rosa pulled a small trowel from her bag. She loosened the dirt around that stone. The soil smelled cool and rich, as if it had never been disturbed since it was first buried. Paul held his breath as Rosa levered the stone free. Beneath, they saw a rectangular metal box, rusty and covered in moss. The edges were corroded, but Rosa could still make out a latch. She wiped her gloves on her pants and carefully opened. The lid on inside lay several items: a tarnished silver bracelet engraved with the initials LM, small green backpack clip familiar from her childhood collection, and a folded piece of paper that looked like a diary page. Rosa's heart pounded. The initials matched Lily Mitchell's name. The backpack clip must have been part of Lily's green bag she carried that day. She pulled out the paper, brushing off dirt and moss. The page was yellowed, but legible. Neat, small handwriting. Someone had written, "Secret safe place. Only follow the lines." Underneath, tiny numbers and symbols filled the margin numbers that looked like coordinates. Rosa showed the bracelet to Paul. He shook his head in wonder. "No doubt these belong to Lily," he said softly. "But how did they get here?" Rosa's mind raced. Was Lily meant to find this hidden spot herself? Did someone else bury her belongings here? And what about Lily herself? Where was she now? She slipped the paper into a plastic sleeve in her bag, careful to preserve any fingerprints or DNA. Then she took a deep breath and called Detective Harper, the lead investigator on Lily's cold case. Within minutes, Harper arrived with uniformed officers and forensic technicians. They cordoned off the area and began processing the scene. A crime scene photographer snapped pictures of the box and the carvings. Officers dusted for prints on the metal latch. Harper called the Mitchell family and asked them to meet at the park immediately. Rosa stood aside, watching as the evidence she uncovered transformed from legend to proof. Her heart ached for Lily and her family. She had not come here looking for this kind of discovery, but now she could not turn away. Moments later, Emma and her parents arrived, guided by Detective Harper. Emma's eyes widened when she saw Rosa holding the silver bracelet. She recognized it at once. "That's Lily's," Emma whispered. Susan fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Mark placed a hand on Rosa's shoulder, gratitude, and sorrow mixing in his eyes. Rosa knelt beside them, offering the box gently. Emma opened it and lifted out the diary page, her fingers trembling over the handwriting. "Only follow the lines," she read aloud, voice quivering. Then she looked up at Rosa. "You found her things," she said, her voice both broken and hopeful. Detective Harper spoke softly. "This changes everything. We need to trace these coordinates and search beyond this spot." Paul unfolded Rosa's map and pointed to the next location, a small hollow beneath the collapsed wall. "If the trapper's markers point this way, perhaps there's more." Rosa felt a surge of determination. She had set out to find legend, but now she realized she was on the verge of finding the truth. And that truth could finally answer the Mitchell family's prayer. What happened to Lily? As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the team prepared to follow the carved trail beyond the oak. Rosa lingered a moment, placing her hand on the tree's trunk. The spirals and lines felt warm beneath her palm, alive with purpose once more. She whispered to the oak, "Thank you for waiting." Then she picked up her tools and joined Emma, Susan, Mark, Paul, and Detective Harper as they set off toward the next mark on the ground. The hunt for treasure had turned into something more precious, a quest to bring a lost child home at last. Rosa led the small team across the meadow, following the line of symbols carved into the oak's trunk. Emma walked beside her, holding the diary page in one hand and the map in the other. Detective Harper brought up the rear with 2 officers, and Paul carried reference books tucked under his arm. The air felt heavy with hope and nerves. 11 years of searching had come to this moment. They reached the collapsed stone wall that lay half hidden by brambles. Some stones had tumbled away, leaving a shallow gap at the base. Rosa knelt to inspect the earth around the gap and saw faint traces of the spiral carvings in the dirt. "Tapped the map here," she said softly. "This is where the carving points." Emma bent down and brushed away leaves. The soft soil felt cooler here. She pointed to a cluster of etched symbols nearly buried under moss, a spiral flanked by 2 short lines. Detective Harper carefully measured the distance from the oak tree to the wall and compared it to Rosa's original notes. It matched almost exactly. Harper nodded. "Good work," he said, signaled to the officers, and they set up yellow evidence tape to protect the area. Paul set down his books and opened one to the page about trapper marks. He read aloud, "When you see this spiral with 2 lines, it means look down." Emma traced the pattern in the dirt, her fingertip following the same path Paul described. Rosa and the officers cleared more debris with small trowels, working slowly so they did not damage any potential evidence. Emma knelt beside Rosa and held a flashlight to shine light on the ground. Suddenly Rosa paused and ran her gloved finger along a shape in the soil. It was the edge of a fabric soft and dark against the brown earth. Rosa signaled to everyone to be still. She slipped a small brush from her bag and gently removed soil from the fabric. As the soil fell away, they saw the edge of a light blue jacket, thin and familiar. Emma's breath caught. She stood and knelt beside the jacket, brushing more dirt away until she could make out its shape. The soft cotton fabric had small white polka dots and a faded tag inside that read size 8. Emma's hand closed over hers. "It's Lily's," Emma whispered, tears coming to her eyes. Or Susan, who had been watching from a short distance, with Mark, rushed forward when she heard Emma's voice. Susan sank to her knees, hands shaking as Rosa uncovered more of the jacket. Mark put an arm around Susan, his own eyes wet. Detective Harper knelt on the opposite side, examining the jackets, pockets. He found a small folded paper, similar to the diary page Rosa had discovered earlier. He placed the jacket and paper gently into evidence bags. Emma unzipped her own backpack and took out a photograph of Lily wearing the same jacket on her last day in the park. She held it against the unburied jacket and nodded, her lips trembling. Paul studied the second diary page. "Its writer left clues for someone to find," he said quietly. "They trusted us enough to hide these things." The diary entry read, "Follow the spiral to the wall. There you will see the blue cloth. Underneath, hope awaits." Emma's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Rosa. "They wanted me to." "Find her," Emma said softly. She knew someone would follow these marks one day. Rosa placed a comforting hand on Emma's shoulder. "You did, Emma. You found her things, and now we know where to look next." Detective Harper called. For backup, he asked the officers to bring in forensic technicians and a small excavation crew. Within the hour, more people arrived with shovels, brushes, and cameras. They set up a grid over the area 10 feet by 10 feet around the jacket site. Each section was labeled with a letter and number. Photographers took pictures from every angle. Emma watched as the professionals worked with quiet care, each movement deliberate. The excavation began in section B3, where the jacket lay. Technicians removed thin layers of soil, brushing and sifting for any small items. Emma traced the spiral symbols in the soil with her fingertip one last time before stepping back. Hours passed as the sun moved across the sky. Volunteers brought water and snacks. Susan and Mark sat nearby, holding hands and watching each carefully examined scoop of earth. At last, in section C4, a technician called out softly, "Found something." Everyone gathered around as he uncovered a small wooden box, its surface worn by time. The box was tied with a frayed ribbon. Rosa knelt and opened it. Inside lay a tarnished silver locket on a delicate chain and a folded photograph of a kindly old man in a ranger's uniform. The locket opened to reveal two tiny portraits, one of Lily as a toddler, the other of Lily sitting on her father's shoulders. Susan gasped, placing a hand over her mouth. Mark bent down and picked up the locket, holding it close. Emma recognized the photograph at once. She ran her finger over the ranger's uniform. "That's Mr. Spencer," she said. "The retired ranger from Cedar Grove?" She remembered him as a gentleman who once gave Lily stickers on a summer visit. Susan's tears fell. "He must have tried to protect her," Susan said. "He hid these things for us to find one day." Detective Harper pocketed the locket and photograph as evidence, spoke gently to the Mitchells. "This gives us a lead. We need to find out what happened to Mr. Spencer and where he took." Lily, Rosa, Emma, Susan, and Mark followed the detective toward the oak tree, carrying the recovered items. They gathered beneath the wide branches and held a brief moment of silence. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves as if echoing their hushed prayers. Paul consulted his reference books again. He pointed to a passage describing how trappers sometimes left messages for helpers who would bury value and protect people in danger. "Perhaps Mr. Spencer was more than a ranger," Paul said. "Maybe he used this system to guide Lily away from harm." Emma closed her eyes, imagining Lily following the carvings, trusting the symbols to lead her somewhere safe. Yes! Her heart ached and swelled with hope at the same time. Detective Harper nodded. "We will trace Mr. Spencer's records. We will look for any personal connections. And we will search the areas he knew well." He looked at Rosa. "Your discovery set this in motion." "Thank you." Rosa shook her head. "We did it together." Emma stepped forward. "Lily, I promise we will keep following these marks until we find you," she said. Her voice wavered, but carried. She touched the locket's chain against her heart, as if Lily could feel it there. The sun dipped low, painting the sky pink and orange. The team packed up their equipment, but left the grid marked for further work the next day. Carved symbols on the oak looked brighter in the sunset, as if renewed by the day's discoveries. Susan held the photograph of Mr. Spencer close. Mark folded the jacket over his arm. Emma carried the diary pages in a small notebook. Rosa watched them with admiration and hope. As they walked back toward the park entrance, Emma glanced at the oak. She whispered, "Thank you for guiding us." Behind her, the symbols lay waiting for the next traveler who might need their wisdom. And in the soft twilight, the promise that Lily would be found one day felt stronger than ever. The morning sun broke through low clouds as Rosa, Emma, Susan, Mark, Detective Harper, and Paul returned to Cedar Grove Park. The air felt fresh and cool, and the grass glowed with dew. After yesterday's finds, everyone felt a mix of excitement and calm. They gathered near the old oak tree, its carvings now meaning so much more. Emma held the diary pages and the locket carefully in her hands as they planned the day's work. Detective Harper spoke softly. "We have one more symbol to follow," he said, pointing to the final line in Lily's diary. Beneath. The heart of the oak looked deeper still. Emma traced the words with her finger. "That must mean under the biggest roots," she whispered. Rosa unrolled her map, marked with all the coordinates found so far. She identified a spot near the center of the tree, where the roots dug deepest into the earth. They formed a small circle. Susan closed her eyes and pressed her hand to the oak's bark. "My sweet Lily," she murmured, "guide us one last time." Mark placed a hand on Susan's shoulder, and Emma laid a hand on her mother's other. Armed together, they stood in silence for a moment, listening to the soft rustle of leaves. Even the birds seemed to wait. Rosa knelt at the base of the tree and brushed away leaves. The roots twisted like large snakes across the ground. Beneath the largest root, the soil was soft and dark. She dug gently with a trowel, creating a small trench. Emma shone a flashlight into the hole, and Paul held books ready in case more symbols appeared. Robins sang overhead as if cheering them on. After several careful shovelfuls, Rosa's trowel struck something hard. She paused and looked up. "Everyone, please be careful here," she said. Detective Harper and his officers moved in to secure the spot. Rosa knelt and used her brush to clear dirt from the edge of a wooden plank laid across the root's base. The plank was old, warped by time, and covered in moss. Emma leaned forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She recognized Lily's handwriting on the plank's surface. The same neat, small letters. "Safe place. Do not fear." Emma's breath came in quick gasps. Susan knelt beside her, pressing a trembling hand on Emma's back. Mark stood behind them, blinking away tears in the early light. Detective Harper signaled to the forensic team. They removed the plank gently and discovered a shallow, square shaft beneath. The opening was no wider than a small grave, and the walls were lined with wooden boards that had darkened with age. A damp, earthy smell rose from the hole. Spoke as they peered down. Emma saw something pale at the bottom. Rosa leaned over and turned on her headlamp. They saw a small wooden chest, its metal hinges rusted, but intact. Next to it lay a faded cloth bundle. Paul knelt and pulled on gloves, then reached into the shaft, lifted out the bundle first. It unwrapped to reveal a small doll, Lily's favorite toy, the one she carried everywhere. Its hair was tangled, its dress torn, but Emma recognized it at once. She clutched it to her chest, rocking it gently as though it were alive. Then the chest came up. It was heavier than expected. Detective Harper set it on a nearby tarp and knelt to open it. Inside lay a small bundle of letters, the final diary page, and a pair of small glasses with no lenses. The letters were tied. With a ribbon, Emma untied them with careful fingers. The top letter was addressed to my brave Lily. She unfolded it and read aloud in a trembling voice, "Dear Lily, I could not bear to leave you alone in danger. I made a promise to keep you safe until help came. I hid your things here and left clues so you could find me if you ever had to be brave, but I never made it back. Please know I tried. I love you always, Mr. Spencer." Emma's voice cracked. Susan put her arms around her daughter as Emma continued reading. The letter spoke of how Mr. Spencer had found Lily lost and frightened under the oak. He wrapped her in his ranger's coat and carried her to this hidden spot, hoping to keep her safe until someone came. He had planned to lead her on a safe path out of the park, but fell ill before he could return. The rest of the letters were notes from him, each instructing Lily where to look, encouraging her to follow the marks. Tears rolled down Emma's cheeks as she finished the letter. Susan knelt beside the chest and lifted the final diary page. It described Lily's journey after Mr. Spencer placed her in the safe spot. She wrote of feeling warm and safe in his arms, of listening to the carvings and trusting them. But at some point, Lily grew tired and fell asleep by the chest. The page ended abruptly with Lily's small scrawl. "Mr. Spencer said someone will come for me," then no more words. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The birds began to chirp again. The morning breeze picked up, stirring the leaves overhead. Mark brushed away a tear from Susan's cheek. Detective Harper closed the chest gently. "We have found where Mr. Spencer tried to protect Lily," he said. "Now we must learn what happened to him and Lily after that moment." Rosa wiped her hands on a cloth and knelt by Emma. "You followed Lily's clues," Rosa said softly. "You brought us here." Emma nodded, clutching the doll to her chest. "She was never alone," Emma whispered. "She had Mr. Spencer with her until help came." Susan leaned forward, placing her hand on the doll's cheek. "Thank you," she murmured, though her voice trembled. "Thank you for loving my Lily." Detective Harper radioed for a medical examiner and more investigators. They dusted the sides of the shaft for prints and took soil samples. Emma and her parents sat on the blanket they had used 11 years ago. The red and white pattern faded now. Emma held the doll in her lap, its missing eye staring into the distance, as though waiting for Lily herself. As the day wore on, forensic experts discovered Mr. Spencer's remains at the bottom of the shaft. He had lain beside Lily to protect her until he could no longer move. It was a sad but brave end. The news brought both grief and relief to the Mitchell family. They now understood that Mr. Spencer had given his life to keep Lily safe. They also knew Lily's own fate. She had followed the marks but may have never woken from exhaustion. In the afternoon, the Mitchells arranged for Mr. Spencer's remains to be moved with honor. He was laid to rest in the town cemetery with full honors from the local rangers. Beside him, they placed Lily's doll and the diary pages as symbols of his devotion. Susan whispered a prayer at the graveside, tears falling onto Mr. Spencer's casket. Emma laid the doll gently on the coffin, then touched the headstone with Lily's name carved above his. "Thank you," Emma said. "Thank you for saving her." Back at the park, Mark and Rosa stood beneath the oak. Rosa placed the locket on a low branch next to the spiral carvings. Mark knelt and tied a ribbon around the branch with Lily's name. The ribbon fluttered in the breeze like a promise. "Now the truth is known," Mark said, his voice soft. "She will live in our hearts forever." Rosa nodded, placing a hand on the tree's rough bark. "And so will he," she said, thinking of Mr. Spencer. As the sun set, the Mitchell family returned home carrying Lily's doll, her diary pages, and the silver bracelet. Emma laid the doll on her sister's empty bed, as though waiting for Lily's return. In her mind, Lily and Mr. Spencer were together, safe at last. Susan gently closed the bedroom door, leaving a night light shaped like an oak leaf glowing softly. That night the house was quiet, but not empty. The Mitchells gathered in the living room, sharing memories of Lily and stories of Mr. Spencer's kindness. They laughed and cried together, finding comfort in each other. For the first time in 11 years, they felt a sense of peace. They still missed Lily, and they always would. But they knew she had not been abandoned. She had been loved and protected until the end. In the days that followed, Cedar Grove Park installed a memorial near the oak tree. A bronze plaque told the story of Lily Mitchell and Ranger Joseph Spencer, whose lives were forever linked beneath the ancient branches. The spiral carvings were restored and highlighted, along with the words, "Trust the path. Love never ends." Emma visited the park often, tracing the carvings with her fingers and standing before the memorial, in her palm, its single glass eye reflecting the sky. She felt close to Lily whenever she touched that doll. One afternoon, she added a new ribbon to the oak, a simple green strip with her sister's name written on it. She whispered, "I love you, Lily," and the wind carried her words away. As seasons changed, the park remained a place of memory and hope. Families picnicked beneath the oak, unaware of the deep story etched into its bark. But Emma, Susan, and Mark knew the truth. They knew that love and courage could guide lost souls home, even after many years. And as long as Cedar Grove Park stood, Lily's story would live on to brave hearts forever, entwined beneath the spreading branches of that old oak tree.